What's up, fantasy managers? I can't express how important it is to draft studs with your early picks. Avoiding duds in the first 2 rounds can make a difference between a terrible season and winning your league. So I'll share my draft guide for rounds 1 and 2 so you don't have to worry about picking the wrong player anymore. I know you're interested, so stick around for 7 seconds.
You can do it!
All right, zoners, let's get right into this. I'm going to start with the 101 pick, and I'm going to finish at pick 212. So the first pick is obvious. Christian McCaffery, running back 1. You want to draft a player that can give you the biggest advantage in fantasy football. McCaffery scored 100 more points than last year's RB2. It was the biggest advantage in points for any position. He was near the top in rushing attempts, rushing yards, yards per carry, rushing touchdowns, and receptions. He led the league with 339 touches on the year, and nothing has changed this offseason. At the 102 pick, Ceedee Lamb, wide receiver 1. Lamb put up career numbers last season as Dak Prescott's favorite wide receiver and ended the year as wide receiver 1. No one on the Cowboys is a threat to Lamb. And with no upgrade in running back, you can expect the Cowboys to throw 37 times per game again. And for Lamb to keep his 29.9% target share. You can expect the same stat line in 2024 because the Cowboys didn't add any weapons to their wide receiver core. He has similar stats as Tyreek Hill, and you could feel safe taking Hill as wide receiver 2, but I'm choosing age before beauty in this situation. Now at the 103 pick, Tyreek Hill, wide receiver 2. Tyreek Hill has ended the last 2 seasons as wide receiver 2 in fantasy scoring. Mike McDaniels knows how to use Hill. He is Tua's favorite target in a high-scoring offense, even though he showed no signs of slowing down that season as he was first in yards per route run. He is 30 years old, which is why I have him after Ceedee Lamb, just to play it safe. And at the 104, Bijan Robinson, running back 2 off the board. Arthur Smith misused Robinson. Drafted a bell cow running back, but give him only 2 goal line carries and 31st in opportunity share. But he still finished tied with Derrick Henry as RB9 last year. Now his new head coach and offensive coordinator came from Sean McVay's coaching tree. And McVay's offense provided multiple running backs in the top 2 fantasy points per game with Kyron Williams and years with Todd Gurley. A very talented running back who will be used like an RB1 and improve his goal line carries and opportunities for this upcoming season. At pick 105, I have Breece Hall, running back 3. With no quarterback, no offensive line, and returning from an ACL injury, he finished as RB2. On the season, he was close to 1,600 total yards with very bad quarterback play and a bad offensive line. And we did see he can score from anywhere on the field. And the dude only had 1 goal line carry last season. He had a game with 37 carries and another with 16 targets. Now, I don't expect him to have more games with 37 rushing attempts if Aaron Rodgers stays healthy. Offensive line is a question mark, but I think it may have improved this offseason. He was 5th in forced missed tackles per attempt, and Breece Hall can be drafted before Bijan Robinson and not think twice about it. At 106, I have Amon-Ra St. Brown, wide receiver 3. Probably the most consistent wide receiver in the top 10. With 1 game under 12 points last year, you know this guy won't lose you weeks. He was 5th in target share and 3rd in red zone targets. He is Jared Goff's favorite wide receiver. He does have a low ceiling than other top wide receivers, but his consistency might have won you a championship last year as he was the only wide receiver to score over 20 points in every fantasy playoff game. No concerns with wide receiver 3 drafted. He actually only scored sub 14 points in PPR formats once in 9 fantasy playoff games. At 107, I had Justin Jefferson, wide receiver 4. He was wide receiver 5 in points per game last season, and he did that with Nick Mullen and Jaron Hall. He put up a 36-point game against a division rival. His ceiling is high with any quarterback, but with questions with Sam Darnold and J.J. McCarthy, there might be multiple weeks where he will not score many points. Or he might see a 160 target, 110 receptions, and 10 touchdown season. I can't take Justin Jefferson over St. Brown with a question mark at quarterback. 108, Ja'Marr Chase, wide receiver 5. And if we're going to speak about question marks with quarterbacks, then I'll mention Joe Burrow missing time and Ja'Marr Chase missing time. They've missed 13 games combined the last 2 years. In the last 2 seasons, he was drafted inside top 5, but finished wide receiver 11. Without Joe Burrow last season, Chase was wide receiver 33. But we know when they're on the field together, there is no ceiling. He has scored 2 50-point games in his career with Joe Burrow. If Joe and Chase can play majority of the games together, he can be a top 3 wide receiver. With Tyler Boyd gone and T. Higgins and rookie Jermaine Burton normally not playing the slot, Chase can spend more time in the slot position and rack up receptions. At 109, Garrett Wilson, wide receiver 6. Once again, we are face to face with a wide receiver who has potential to be a big breakout, and it's because of his quarterback. I'm sure you can't disagree Wilson is a talented wide receiver, but had bad luck with quarterbacks. Out of 168 targets, 114 were catchable. That was 65th overall last season. If Aaron Rodgers can stay healthy, the catchable target percentage will extremely improve. I believe Aaron Rodgers is pissed off at the Packers, the haters, and his life. So he wants to go ball out this year to prove he is still elite. And he will need to use Wilson to be elite. Let's see Garrett Wilson's final form. At pick 110, I have Jonathan Taylor. He's running back 4 off the board. He is one of the best running backs in the league, and he is on the Shane Steichen offense. We've seen Taylor put up 22 points per game and 20 touchdowns season before, and also had 18 points per game the second half of 2023. So the possibility is there, and Zach Moss is gone. We're going to see an offense that will score a lot of points with a healthy Richardson, top 10 offensive line, and Taylor as the running back. Richardson will vulture touchdowns, no doubt about it. But I believe most games we will see both Taylor and Richardson score touchdowns. Now, I haven't seen or read anything yet, but if there are talks about tush push in Indianapolis, you better run for the hills. Now at the 1-1-1 mark, A.J. Brown, wide receiver 7. Finished as wide receiver 5, but didn't perform well the last quarter of the season. In week 18, he had minus 0.1 points, which is crazy. He has a new offensive coordinator, Kellen Moore, who has put a team's number 1 wide receiver in the top 10 multiple times. A lot of big experts believe he has a potential to bust. But I believe he is too big, fast, and talented to not thrive in Kellen Moore's offense. His target rate versus man was number 1 because he will beat man coverage 100% of the time. The only reason I don't have him in the top 10 overall is because Jalen Hurts' passing efficiency will need to improve to support a top 5 wide receiver. And the last pick in the first round, I have to go with Jahmyr Gibbs, running back 5. From week 7, when he got his bigger workload, he was RB4. He is an explosive and elusive running back. He was 10th in forced missed tackles per attempt and 13th in evaded tackles, while also 3rd in breakaway runs. He is on a great offense with one of the best offensive lines. I also expect his receptions to increase from 52. If he wasn't sharing the backfield with David Montgomery, he would be RB4. Real quick, before we go to the second round, if you made it this far, please hit the subscribe, press the like, leave a comment saying what you think about this video. Anything goes a long way, so thank you very much. Now with the first pick in the second round, I have to go with Puka Nacua, wide receiver 8. He is last year's wide receiver 4. He had a great start to the season while Cooper Kupp missed time with injuries. When Kupp returned to action, there were 2 games where both players scored over 15 points. It was normally one or the other who had a great game. And Kupp is currently healthy in 2024, but older. I believe Nacua can get 100 catches again because he is unguardable. He earned a 28% target share against zone and 1,000 receiving yards against zone 2. I can't place him any higher because of only 6 receiving touchdowns. And touchdown vulture Demarcus Robinson appears to have taken over Tutu Atwell in the depth chart. It might be tough for him to get more touchdowns this season. And at 202, I have Saquon Barkley. He's running back 6 off the board. Behind one of the worst offensive lines in 2023, Barkley finished the year as running back 13. Now he's behind one of the best offensive lines, and the Eagles were first in run block win rate last year. Eagles didn't want to pay DeAndre Swift, but they wanted to pay an older Saquon Barkley. We hope the Eagles will limit the amount of tush-push plays for Jalen Hurts and instead run the ball with Barkley. And that offense, he could bounce back into a top 10 fantasy scorer. I'm not putting a 29-year-old with question marks inside top 5 for running backs, but he has the potential if given enough goal line carries. And at 203, Drake London. This is a discounted Garrett Wilson. He received a major upgrade at quarterback. With his quarterbacks last year, his catchable target rate was 35th in the league. Kirk Cousins has a pattern of hyper-targeting his wide receiver 1s. So these are Kirk Cousins' number 1 wide receiver fantasy finishes in PPR. In 2018, he had 2 top 10 wide receivers. 2019, he had wide receiver 24. But in 2020, he had a wide receiver 6, 2021, wide receiver 4, and 2022, wide receiver 1. He is more accurate than Desmond Ridder and Taylor Heineke, and London is the clear number 1. With a new quarterback and new coaching staff, I expect the Falcons to be on the field more and improve their 18 points per game from 2023, and London to get peppered close to 140 targets. And in fantasy football, you need to chase the targets. London had 2 touchdowns in 2023. Expect that to go up closer to the 10 mark. At 204, I have my first rookie, Marvin Harrison Jr., wide receiver 10. The draft capital pretty much says everything, and this dude's a freak. 6'3", 205 pounds. On tape, he looks great in man coverage with his route running. At Ohio State, he managed 18 yards per reception. had 29% target share and 14 touchdowns. I don't think we'll get the Puka Nacua receptions, but he'll have more touchdowns than 6. Kyler Murray does treat his wide receiver ones well. Okay, so at 205, I have Derrick Henry, running back 7. He is my scariest pick, but yet I draft him every time as my running back 1. His age is a factor, a new team late in his career is a factor, and changes at the offensive line for the Ravens are also a factor. But you can't deny how many opportunities he will have at the goal line. Lamar Jackson is losing weight. I don't believe they want to use him at the goal line anymore. Besides, he only had 5 rushing touchdowns last season. We might see another Raheem Mostert year where he barely gets 1,000 rushing yards but have 18 rushing touchdowns, which is perfectly fine. Or he will have 1,500 rushing yards and 18 touchdowns and finish as RB1. So look, he has been one of the best running backs in the past 7 years and now might be on the best team he's ever had. I'm rolling the dice and choosing reward over risk, and there's only one other running back who I believe has a chance to be RB1 at the end of the season, who's drafted after Derrick Henry. So he is fine at pick 17. Let's not forget, Gus Edwards had 13 touchdowns in this offense last year. At pick 206, I have Kyren Williams. He's running back 8 off the board. He would have been my running back 4, but McVay had to go and draft Blake Corum, who he keeps saying is like a Kyren Williams. Part of the reason Williams was great last year is because he was second in points per game and first in snap share. And because the Rams run a 3 wide receiver set 94% of the time, which means he only saw 8 men in the box 4% of the time. That's the least amount for any running back with a minimum of 90 attempts. But the opportunities may change with Blake Corum. Sean McVay wants to keep Williams healthy by sharing his load, but we don't know how much. It could be a 50-50, 60-40. Either way, I don't see him getting 228 carries again and have fewer than 15 total touchdowns. But he can still be a top 10 back in this Rams offense. At pick 207, Travis Etienne, running back 9. He finished as RB3 overall, but I have him as RB9 getting drafted 21st. His running metrics were great, 12th in missed tackles forced per attempt, 4th in yards created, and did so behind a bad offensive line. He also had good volume, 4th in carries, 7th in targets, and 15 in red zone touches, but he started losing total touches at the end of the year, went from 22 to 16 a game. We saw Trevor Lawrence take more control as he became quarterback 7 from weeks 11 to 18. I believe that trend will continue in 2024, and Doug Peterson keeps telling everybody how Tank Bigsby will help carry the load, which is nuts because Bigsby was so bad last year. Etienne will still be used in the pass game. He had 58 receptions last year, but expect Etienne's carries, yards, and touchdowns to drop some unless Bigsby still sucks. And at the 208 pick, Isiah Pacheco, running back 10. This dude has top 10 potential written all over him. His only competition on the team is Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who is Clyde Edwards-Helaire. They didn't pick up a big name running back in free agency or draft a rookie running back. He is a good runner as he was top 12 in yards created and breakaway run rate. But the important thing is he managed 44 receptions on a pass-first team. They pass the 5th most in the league. And even though they only ran 39% of the time, all the carries are for Pacheco, and he was 7th in red zone touches. With Jared McKinnon currently not on the team, the red zone touches will go up. He can reach double-digit touchdowns this year. Travis Etienne had 315 touches last year. I don't think Pacheco will come close to that, so I can't rank him ahead of Etienne. So at 209, Brandon Aiyuk, wide receiver 11 off the board. This is a tricky one. The 49ers were 2nd in points per game last year, so I want to own a part of that offense. I can't get their running back 1st overall, so I'll target their wide receiver 1, who had 80 receptions on 109 targets and 7 touchdowns and averaged 17.9 yards per catch. The problem is Brandon Aiyuk scored 50 points over expected in 2023, which is 1st for wide receivers. Deebo Samuel was 2nd, so they're both due for a regression. But the Fantasy Red Zone believes Deebo is higher risk for a bust because he relies on rushing touchdowns. And if NFL teams can take the Kansas City Chiefs blueprint and stop Deebo Samuel, then there's more opportunity for Aiyuk. I can't put him in front of Marvin Harrison because of the lack of competition Harrison has compared to Aiyuk. At 210, I got Nico Collins, wide receiver 12. From the depths of Mordor rises the sleeper king. I put him behind Brandon Aiyuk because Nico Collins' target share is 29th and Aiyuk's is 18th. Other than that, they have similar stats for targets, receptions, receiving yards, yards per catch, and Collins had 1 more touchdown. His target share may get worse with Joe Mixon and Stephon Diggs on the team, but he was 6th in yards after catch. He is 6'4", 215 pounds, and hard to bring down. You can draft Collins in front of Aiyuk and we'll be okay. At 211, I have Joe Mixon. It was RB6 overall in 2023, but I have him as RB11. This dude is nothing more than volume and receptions. His efficiency as a runner is garbage, as he was 35th in yards created per touch and 8th in snap share. Mixon can't run well, but still, this dude was 3rd in red zone touches and had 13 goal line carries with 12 total touchdowns. He has always been a good pass-catching running back who was 9th in receptions last season. And his only concern this year is Dameon Pierce, who was worse than Mixon with his efficiency as a runner. So my last pick in the second round will have to be Mike Evans, wide receiver 13. A 30-year-old wide receiver put up 13 touchdowns and 1,200 receiving yards with Baker Mayfield as their quarterback. He finished the year as wide receiver 7. He won't give you 100 receptions, as his career high in 10 seasons is 96. He averages 75 a year, but he will give you 1,000 receiving yards, and he hasn't shown evidence that he is capable of a sub-1,000 yard year. He averages 8 touchdowns a year with double-digit touchdowns at 5 out of the 10 seasons. I don't have him higher because the Buccaneers lost offensive coordinator Dave Canales, so we might see a regression with Baker Mayfield. But he was 13th in yards per route run and 9th in total route wins, and a true wide receiver 1 for a team with touchdown upside. So that's my draft order for the first 2 rounds. There may be some players that you've noticed that are not on this list. Maybe players like Devon Achane, Josh Allen, and Devontae Adams. Well, Achane could be a league winner for sure. I had him last year and saw how great of a runner he is in the Mike Daniels offense, but I also saw Raheem Mostert take all the goal line carries and saw Achane get hurt when he is tackled. He averaged 14 touches last year, and I don't see that increasing, but he was still effective with limited opportunities last year. Might be the riskiest RB who doesn't get goal line carries. Josh Allen is the man, but I'd wait until round 3. He rushed for 15 touchdowns last year. That would be hard to copy without a guaranteed play like the tush push. Devontae Adams will get all the targets per usual, but how many will be deemed catchable? He only had 4 weekly finishes inside the top 10 and 7 weekly finishes outside the top 30. He'll have games where he'll win you weeks, but he'll have too many games where he'll lose you weeks. His floor is too low in this Raiders system and subpar quarterback play. Not worth it in my first 2 rounds. By following this draft guide, you will have a better understanding who to draft at the position that you are in. Remember, we want absolute studs in the first 2 rounds if we want any chance of winning the league. Another way to win the league is to pick players that have the best value. Click this video here to find out the players that you would rather have. Until then, deuces.